Moana Maki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Government Junior Whip might think that the time has well passed for talking and we just need to get on and do it. The question then has to be asked, why has it taken so long for this piece of legislation to come back to the House? A piece of legislation which has the support of all of Parliament, a piece of legislation which is non-contentious, and the question needs to therefore be asked, why has it taken so long for this particular piece of legislation to come through, particularly when we've been passing far less important pieces of legislation, far more damaging pieces of legislation. Maybe, in fact, the Carter Observatory Act repeal bill might have been a very important piece of legislation to have promoted earlier on. And I put that question to the Minister who's in the House, the Honourable Wayne Mapp, about why it's taken so long for this piece of legislation to come back to the House and to pass through its stages.
Despite machine-like efficiency.
That's quite right. Despite the Minister's machine-like efficiency, here we are. It's taken a while to get through this second reading. And, of course, Labor supports this piece of legislation. And I think we have to give two thank yous at the outset of this particular debate. And the first thank you goes to Mr Charles Rooking Carter, who of course gifted his estate to the Royal Society of New Zealand for the establishment of an astronomical observatory in New Zealand. And it cannot be underestimated or said enough how important that particular that gift was and how much we should be in debt to him. And the second thank you, of course, actually needs to go to the Wellington City Council, because without their support for the ongoing work of the Carter Observatory, it would not have been able to continue. And I think that the Wellington City Council needs to be congratulated in this respect for its recognition of the importance of this observatory. And I think all members of the House have articulated that the Carter Observatory has an exciting future in tourism and education, and it's with a hint of sadness that we give up our National Observatory. It's no longer fit for purpose, that's clear. It no longer carries out the research function that it once carried out and that national observatories around the world carry out. But there is no denying that astronomy is a gateway into science for a number of young New Zealanders, and that's why it is so important that it continue on in its role in education. For many young New Zealanders, astronomy is the first time that they question the world around them, the things that they don't understand, and they ask for explanations which may not be readily obvious or readily available about what they're seeing in the world around them. And astronomy in many ways is unique in that aspect. For many young New Zealanders and young people around the world, it is the discipline in which they first find themselves fascinated. I never went down the route of watching Star Trek. Wasn't my thing, but for many people, science fiction, Star Trek, all those kind of things, it's what fascinates them, the possibility of intelligent life somewhere else when they look on the other side of the house and don't see it. They figure it must be somewhere else in the universe. Is all an important part of science and of bringing young people into science. And in that regard, it is with a hint of sadness that we say goodbye to our National Observatory in this respect. But at the same time, it's an exciting future for the Carter Observatory, and it will continue on its role in educating young people and in introducing young people to science in its new capacity. And one of the interesting things about the Carter Observatory, which not many people know, is its role as a private tertiary education provider. And this was, again, a very important role that it carried out, not one that was often talked about or often trumpeted by the observatory itself, but it was accredited by the NZQA. It developed national standards in astronomy, and if they hadn't done it, you have to question who might have done it in that respect. And if members go and look at their website, they will see the enormous resource for teachers, the enormous resource that they did developing the pedagogy for teachers in this area so that they could pick it up and bring it into the classroom and make sure that their students were exposed to the kind of exciting and innovative advances that were going on in this area around the world. And I've had many teachers say to me how important that has been. And when you consider that last year the government cut the funding for science advisors, you see that the role for the Carter Observatory becomes even more crucial and even more important. Because the science advisors were a crucial part of our education system. And last year the national government said, well, we don't need them anymore because this year science isn't the focus. And of course what they didn't realise was that those people are in high demand around the world. So those people have all now gone. Those people are all overseas. They've been picked up by other countries who were very keen to take on people who had that dual role of picking up science curriculum and introducing it into the primary education sector, and they've gone. So when the Minister of Education said, well, next year we might bring the funding back, well, that's fantastic, but the people are no longer going to be there, and we on this side of the House think that science actually needs to be a priority every year, not just the years when it suits the government. And when you consider the issue of national standards as well, now you look at the experience in the UK, they are unscientific, they are not evidence-based at all in any way, shape or form. In fact, Cambridge University recently released a study which showed that the national standards in the UK had destroyed the UK education system categorically. But even, well, it's very important because the Carter Observatory does work on national standards and helping teachers teach in the curriculum, and we're losing that experience, Mr. Speaker, which is why I'm bringing it into this debate.
The difference between astrology and astronomy.
That's right.
It's drawing a long bow.
It's a long bow, but it's a very important bow, Mr. Speaker, a very important bow. And when you look at even the national standards in the UK, at least they included science. At least the national standards in the UK were numeracy, literacy and science. And that's where the Carter Observatory would have an important role in ensuring that our teachers have access to that information and to that experience. And for that reason, we're very pleased that the Carter Observatory will be continuing in their education role, Mr. Speaker. Even though science is not part of the national standards here in New Zealand, which I think is an absolute abomination and an absolute tragedy, because every New Zealand student should be taught science as an absolute priority. It should be placed on the same platform as numeracy and literacy, and I think that it's an indictment on this current government that they haven't done that. So members have raised the issue of, well, will we have another national observatory? Well, we may do, we may not do. I have to point again, we now have centres of research excellence which do pick up some of this role. And of course the centres of research excellence were started under the Labor government. They were a very good initiative, and they've picked up some of these roles of bringing people together around an issue like astronomy, which the Carter Observatory specialised in, and bringing together CRIs, bringing together business, bringing together universities, everyone who's interested around a core issue and getting them to work together, and they've been an enormous success. And maybe we will see something like that develop, and maybe the St John Observatory down in Canterbury might be one of those which might pick it up. And I for my own reasons, want to alert members to the existence of a very, very fantastic observatory in Whakatane. It is, as the New Zealand Herald said, a gem in New Zealand in terms of its capacity and the work that it's doing. And of course the skyline above Whakatane, it's unpolluted, it's unadulterated by light. They have a few issues, Mr. Speaker, with local supermarkets turning on their lights late at night, but the fact is we have many observatories around the country who are looking to help fill in this role where a national observatory once filled in. And if members are interested, they can go to the website www.skyofplenty.com and they can have a look at it. It's not profit-making, it's a community facility, and if members are ever in the Bay of Plenty, I do stress that if they're there overnight, go up and have a look at the Whakatane Observatory, because it truly is wonderful. 3 telescopes, 2 observatories, it performs an education function, it has a teaching room, it has astrophotography, which the students love, Mr. Speaker, and of course this is going to be more difficult now. The Carter Observatory is not a national observatory, but I'm merely pointing out that there are other excellent facilities around the country that carry out this very important function in get my own bill. carry out this very important function in astronomy. They have a large audiovisual room for the students. They can cater for the students to come through overnight, spend the night up there, look at the stars, go look through, and it's incredible that in the middle of provincial New Zealand we have this astonishing facility. And so even though we're here passing a piece of legislation which moves one of our national icons, the Carter Observatory, from being a national observatory to an education and tourism facility, which doesn't diminish it in any way, it's important to recognise, Mr. Speaker, that there are a number of other facilities around the country that do carry out these very important functions. Go have a look at the Whakatane Observatory. I can highly recommend it to members.